Hello everyone and welcome to today's stream. Today we're doing something slightly different. We're doing a workshop. A workshop is back.
Discussion.
Yeah, more of a discussion than the workshop, but we're going to cover lots of hints and tips that we've learned along the way on our micro-budget productions. So this stream is going to focus a little bit more on the feature side of filmmaking, but you can take these rules and adapt them to shorts as well.
You absolutely can. I think everything that we're discussing, the essence of it is really about making a production effective regardless of how much money you've got in the bank to spend. And that obviously applies to shorts or features. But as we said, some of this is geared a little bit more towards the feature side of things.
So the chat room is open, and if you are watching and have any questions regarding anything that we're mentioning here today, or would just like to chip in if you've seen some of the examples that we're going to pull up in a moment, then please feel free to do so. Like Claire mentioned, this is a discussion, so whatever you put in the chat room, we will answer, and we will get this workshop/discussion on its way. So I guess my first question to you is, what is a micro-budget film?
What is a micro-budget, Nat?
No, well, I think if anyone is watching this and you have this answer in your head, or if you want to put it in the chat room, let us know what you think a micro-budget is, because when I found out the actual definition, I was surprised.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because you hear a lot about low budget films, then you hear micro budget. Here at Liftoff we screen such a range. A lot of the work we screen being independent, it is on the lower side.
Absolutely.
But it's still interesting hearing different people's definitions. And I remember when we were having a conversation not that long ago about our favourite micro budget films, there were a few people who sort of said, that's not what I would call micro budget.
No, we were bringing up films in like the
lower 100,000s, weren't we?
Well, into the 100,000, up to 1 million, which I still thought was super low, but we were shot down pretty quickly with that, weren't we? So, if you are watching and you have any thoughts on this, let us know. But our definition, and for the purpose of this discussion, we're going to be talking about films that are under 50,000. Yeah. So we're talking in pounds because we're based in the UK, so whatever that is equivalent in your currency. But it's a good
ballpark figure.
Yeah, exactly. So our definition of a micro-budget feature film is 50,000 and under.
So I guess a good place to go to next then is, where can we look to for great examples of films that have been made for around that money? Because we've spoken about this before, always a good place to start is look at the work that you're trying to fit yourself into. What kind of films do you hope to align yourself with? And it's great to look at those amazing productions that you're seeing in the cinemas or that are screening at top tier festivals. That's all very well, and it's great to aspire to, but sometimes I think it is nice, isn't it, to see what you can more practically fit in with. So if you haven't been watching micro-budget films or true micro-budgets, it's sort of like, how can you expect to produce a good one, isn't it?
So we have 6 different examples that we'll be bringing up today. Let us know if you've seen any of these, and let us know your thoughts on these films. Remember, all of their budgets are under that 50,000 mark. So I'm just going to pull those films up. So the first one we're going to start with is Slacker, and this was made in 1990 by Richard Linklater.
A firm favourite here at Liftoff.
A firm favourite here at Liftoff, and I'm sure you've watched many, many, many of his other films.
Co-founder Ben Pullman was speaking about this guy just the other day and saying how much he loves all his films.
Absolutely. So this film was made for $23,000 dollars. We're moving into dollars for these budgets. So $23,000, and this is an American independent comedy drama. Yeah. Have you seen this film? Let us know. Let us know in the comments. The next film we have is Primer, and this was made in 2004 by Shane Carruth, and it was made for $7,000.
Which is crazy. 7,000, there we go.
We get lots of short films that come in at that budget, so have a full-on feature length at that as well is just great. This is an American independent psychological science fiction film. Again, a fantastic film. I think this is available on YouTube, or have I just made that up?
Oh, it might be, I'm not sure.
Some of the films that we're mentioning here today are available free online, and you can find them on different streaming platforms as well.
Amazing.
Okay, so another film that we have is Old Joy, and this was made in 2006. And this is an American road movie made for $300,000. I think this is the one that hits that. So it is out of our $50,000 budget that we were just speaking about. But it is.
But it fits into the initial budget that we initially thought is what we would consider MicroBudget.
So. Yeah, and this is directed by Kelly Reichardt. I think that's how you say her name. This did amazing in the festival circuit, and she's gone on to have a great career. So do definitely go and check that out. We have a question in the chat here before we move on to the next film, and that is, what is the term for a film made for under 10,000K? Kieran, are we talking feature film or short film here? That would help us determine.
But I mean, either way, I guess the answer is MicroBudget, as you saw their primer on $7,000. I don't know if there's a term for something sort of on an even smaller budget.
Smaller than a micro.
I don't think there is. So I think you would just call all of these MicroBudgets before you're then into the low budget definition. But obviously all of these are kind of like slightly ambiguous terms anyway. And how you choose to define your work is also an interesting question that we didn't really plan to talk about today, but just, I guess, to lightly touch on. It's interesting because sometimes people wouldn't want to class themselves as making micro-budget work, especially when they're then looking to make their next projects. Whereas sometimes it's something you really want to like be proud of and embrace. And that's more the spirit of what we're talking about today, embracing the micro-budget and absolutely maximizing it. One of the things we were talking about is making a film that you couldn't make on more money. Like, it wouldn't be good even if you had $1 million more, isn't it? That's the point. It's like, this is the best this film could be, regardless of how much money. And that was a bit of a tangent, sorry.
Yeah, no, but we're going to be touching about that more tomorrow under the planning section of the MicroBudget. Yeah. But Kieran's just got back to us and he says, either, but personally interested in shorts for now. Great. Well, 10,000 is a healthy budget if you have that for a short film, and you can do a lot with that.
You sure can.
Nice. So moving on then to the next film, we have Tiny Furniture, which is one of Claire's favourite films.
This is really nice. This was Lena Dunham's first film, and I'm not sure where it's available to watch now. I believe Amazon, because I know a lot of her work is now on Amazon Prime. But yeah, a really lovely one, this.
So this was made back in 2010, and they made it for $65,000. And this is an American independent comedy drama film. Okay, and then finally we got Puffy Chair as well. I thought we were moving on to the next one. We got Puffy Chair. 2005, Puffy Chair is a road movie, and it is directed by the Duplass brothers, so Mark and Jay, and it was made for $15,000. Do let us know if you have seen any of these films and our thoughts. I'm mentioning their genre specifically. So do pay attention to what we've been calling these films.
Yeah.
So then the final film, and one a lot of you have probably heard of, is Following. And this is made in 1998 by Christopher Nolan. And this was one of the films that skyrocketed his career. And it's an independent neo-noir crime thriller film. And it was made for $6,000.
In fact, it's worth picking up again on what you said there. It's definitely something we spoke about earlier when we were looking at this collection of films. A lot of these are the films that sort of launched the careers of some of these people who went on to make really more exciting work with higher budgets. So it's interesting to trace back the career, especially with like the Duplass brothers and Lena Dunham and Nolan, obviously. And see like where this took them.
But yeah. So I guess one key thing to take away from looking at these other micro-budget is just go out there and do it. And that's something else that we're going to be talking more about throughout today's stream and tomorrow's. But just pick up your pen and paper, write that script, get it made, get it out there, no matter what the budget is. There is so much that you can do with technology.
Because if they hadn't have done that...
Exactly, where would they be now?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. So we're going to talk a little bit more about genre conventions. Claire, do you want to kickstart?
Yeah, I guess the sort of starting point for us of thinking about this as one of the first bullet points was looking at those films and thinking, well, what did they have in common? You know, if these were all successful on very minimal budgets, what are some of the rules, so to speak, which we don't like saying because there are never, solid rules.
Rules are made to be broken.
Rules are made to be broken as well. But by and large, you will have noticed if you've made your way through that filmography that a lot of those are comedies. They are grounded in very real stories, often with a lot of autobiographical elements in there.
Absolutely.
What else? Comedy. So they're dramas, but there's high stakes, but like that we're not talking action is the point. You did have a sci-fi in there, but what would you call? But it's not sci-fi with huge action backing, is it?
No.
It's still often grounded in this world, which is important when you're talking about budget, of course. And that's really what started this conversation with us. Was interesting that they're following usually quite a specific set of genre rules and conventions. And why is that?
Because it works.
Because it's cheap.
And
it works. Like, if you're talking about action, you need often
millions.
Much money to make the sets, to have the choreography, stunts, all of the things that come in good actions. And the point is, if you try to do those actions but on a low budget, it's going to look a little bit naff, maybe.
Absolutely.
Whereas these road movies, you know, how many of those are road trips? You've got at least 2 road movies there. Family dramas / comedies. That's just about really good writing, which we're also going to come on to next. Yep. It's familiar settings, which we'll then talk about.
And it's the authenticity of the whole feel of the piece.
Exactly.
It feels real. It feels like this could be everyday life.
And that's what you want if the production budget is not going to be quite as high as you initially wanted. So to go back to what we were saying before, it's about embracing that and absolutely turning what could be perceived as a negative in that you can't reach this perceived level that you want to, but actually turning it into a real PowerPoint for the film, making it feel authentic, making it feel more relatable, having all your characters like shown in an empathetic way, something that someone watches, and not home movie, but some of them almost have that feel to them, don't they?
Almost do. And remember, some of these films were shot back in the 90s and early 2000s, where digital wasn't as good as it is today. So when we look back on it in today's eyes, it does look like a home movie. It does have some of those qualities.
But they're using that to work for them, and that's always the point. You're doing everything planned in this production to suit that budget, and that's what we're speaking about.
So when did the digital age really start to kick in? It was the late 90s into the early 2000s when digital really started to make the possibilities for filmmakers to pick up a camera and make a film. That's how film festivals exploded, and it's really interesting to see how these filmmakers, apart from Nolan, I'm not sure if that was shot on film, but how it's now exploded their careers. Another thing to mention here is that none of these productions had A-lister stars in, or at that time A-lister stars. They may be now, but at that time they were almost unknown actors. And
in some of them, they're in their own films. So some of them in that list.
So written by, directed by, produced by, and starring. So it's very much getting your work made no matter what. But it all starts with an amazing script.
Before that, though, we've just got a few points in the chat room there, Nat.
Okay.
Do you want to take a look at the question from Jason?
Yeah, so random question for later. Sometimes catering meals for a team across 10 to 15 days can be one of the biggest challenges, expenses. Do you reckon there are solutions that filmmakers don't usually think of? So actually, comes down to part of the location. The answer to that is yes, food is expensive, but it is essential. And if people are working for a reduced rate, if not free, then having a warm meal, a cold meal is a must. I was going to mention this in locations, but as it's come up, I can reiterate later on. But a lot of the films that we've seen today, apart from the road movies, do have different locations. But if you are looking to shoot a micro budget, think about your locations and think about what is accessible to you. If you have a house that you are shooting in, and you don't need the kitchen, then you can cook your own meals, and you can put on someone to help make those hot meals and have a fridge full, so that there are lots of refreshments throughout the day, and that does help save. But no, at the end of the day, you have to budget for how many days shoot you're going to have, how many crew you've got, how many cast you have, and the food is essential, as mentioned.
It is. I mean, I suppose one way that you can like skirt around it a little bit, but it completely depends on your story and your cast, is if certain people are not needed for the full day, then you're not necessarily having to cater for the full team for every meal. So for breakfast, lunch, and then the dinner. That's one way that you can reduce it slightly, isn't it? Because you might not need everyone. So having people just at the unit base, it is pointless unless you do have to have everyone constantly there. But yeah, big batch cooking, as Nat said, I have catered for a film once myself, and I'll try not to do that. I'll try not to do that again. But big batch cooking, it is great, and home hearty meals. There's nothing a cast and crew will appreciate more once you're into like that 10-hour part of the day than a proper meal.
Masgo's Films here's also got a solution to this, so I'm just going to read out what you've said here. Trying to get backing from ready-made meal companies from the wholesales level can work, because often giving away food at that level is a lot cheaper for them.
That's a really good point.
I hadn't thought of that. Thank you for sharing. Nice.
Also, for one of the days on this set that I was on, we were near a pizza place. And sometimes if you can go to them and say, we're going to have 60 people, is there anything you can do? We want to treat our crew and our cast who have been shooting in this area for a week. What's the best that you could do for us? And along those same lines as what Maz is saying there, I think some people can be really generous.
Absolutely.
Because you're guaranteeing them 60 orders or whatever. So, yeah, that it can work.
But it just comes down to planning what you have access to, and if you do have access to a kitchen or a place where you can set up a kitchen within the location, and then making sure that your budget covers it and it's not a last minute thought where you're like, food, damn it.
Yeah, and along the same lines, if you're doing lots of unit moves, that's got to be something that's sort of scheduled in. Or the opposite to that, if you're just in the middle of nowhere for a whole day, it's no good being 6 hours in and suddenly going, and we've got no more water and food. That's not a way to keep a happy crew and cast.
No, not at all. But you have to first start with an amazing script. You have to we're jumping around here a bit, but the script is essentially the essence of the piece. You can't do anything without a script. And at the micro level, you can make your script the best it can possibly be. Then the micro budget will work around your script, as long as you think about it and in a feasible way. Again, what do you have access to? What locations are in your family circles or within your friendship groups? Do you start building your story around what you have access to rather than writing the script first? That's one thing to look at. And also credit the audience intelligence. You don't need to spell out everything. And that's something that all of these films that we mentioned earlier do very well. They all credit the audience intelligence.
Yeah, definitely. Like they don't waste time, and they're not too gimmicky. That's definitely one of the things we spoke about, wasn't it?
And keep it simple. There was an acronym for this.
KISS.
I think it was KISS. And it was
Keep it stupid simple.
Keep it stupid simple. You have 19 days to make your feature-length film, usually around schedules of other people, especially if you're using them again for a lower fee, if not for free. Then you have to be flexible in what they are possible. There was a very, very good tip I read in an article yesterday about in the planning stages, which we will talk about more tomorrow, but have a look at your cast and crew and figure out how they're going to pay their bills for that month. If you're not paying them, allow for space and time for them to get their other income in. It was a very interesting point, but I'll explain more on that tomorrow. But going back to the script. So work within your means as well. So again, don't try and write an action film.
These things are all linked,
lots of explosions and high budgets when you have a budget of £20,000 or whatever it may be to get your project made.
Exactly. I mean, if we're looking at something like Oh Joy, for how, I don't know, a huge percentage of that film, you're talking about a two-hander having a conversation in pretty much like one location. It's so simple but so effective, and you just know that they've written that thinking, well, as it happens, that was the slightly higher budget, but they're not thinking this is something I'm going to need millions of dollars to make, and so they're able to pull it off. And the other locations, what you said, it's so true, like brainstorming what people have, throw it out there, like asking friends, family, what do you sort of have access to? And sometimes it's amazing what people come back with, isn't it? The different workplaces that people have on their doorsteps, all sorts of things like that. And then, building it around that can be such a good starting point.
This needs to be the project that you're most passionate about. The one that you can't sleep at night about until you get out there, start writing it and start making it, because this process can be long. It's not literally, let's quickly write a script and we've got 20 days to shoot it. This is probably years in the making. So you have to have a project that you're passionate about and that will sustain that period of time of you putting it all together. And if you're passionate, your cast and crew will be passionate. So write something that you are passionate about, and the story.
And then the viewer will be passionate about it. So
exactly.
It like follows all the way through, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Nice.
But yes. Is there any more questions in the chat room before we move on? So my next point actually was about locations, but we've touched on that a little bit. But I think that it is probably apart from the script and getting your cast and crew together, it's the one thing that will add the production value to your production.
Yeah.
Again, is it a ranch? Is it a petrol station? Is it something slightly unusual?
Church.
Is your grandma's house derelict and standing in a field? Like, what do you have access to, and what story can you tell around that piece?
And what I thought was then really interesting was something we've spoken about, which you might want to expand on, was then planning your shots for the location to absolutely make them work to the best they possibly can. We spoke about that, didn't we?
We did, but it was meant for tomorrow's stream. But let's delve into it here, actually.
Okay.
So one way that you can use your location to the best is to plan all of the shots that you want prior to actually setting up the shoot. So look about, okay, for example, there's a long corridor within the location that you're using. Is there a way that you could then turn the scene into a one-take scene? So you walk into the different camera angles instead of having to stop, reset up, move to the camera here, move the camera there. You won't have multiple cameras to set up lots of shots. And if you're pressing on time, look at the locations and see if there's a creative way that you can shoot each of these scenes. A really good example is that of moving into the shots, using the space, that corridor. We watched, it was a feature film, and they'd used a space where you had the room, the corridor, and the camera was quite far back.
Yeah.
But they shot it in that way to give the actors privacy, and it really gave the scene that emotional connection of like, this
really,
is
really
between
good.
them. It's not really for us to hear. And what happened was that the camera then zoomed in, or they panned in to the different angles, and it just left you a little bit like cold watching it. It was really,
amazing.
really clever. So think about your locations and think about what it is that you can achieve with the camera shots, because one, you'll save time, and effectively, if you save time, you save money. So
Absolutely.
it's one way to look at it.
Yeah, the production value one is an interesting point. I remember we had the wonderful assistant director, Terry Bamber, talking to a group of filmmakers at one of our showcases here at Pinewood. And he used an example of where on a very small budget, I don't remember if it was a short or a feature, because he's great. He works on a lot of short films with people that he believes in as well.
Yeah.
And he was speaking about how they managed to secure a location that had a rooftop in London. And he said what was incredible about it was when you then did either a wide shot or if you panned around, you had the London skyline.
And there is different angles of it.
And there is something about that, of course, that just instantly raises a production value, doesn't it? Because if you're on the roof of a building and you're seeing that, I think the mind is definitely tricked into like, that's that's an expensive place to be. That's an amazing view. So little things like that, when in actual fact, it might have been a really run-down rooftop on any building in any part of London. But these tricks like that as well can just like instantly raise production value, and it's always worth reaching out and thinking about that.
So yeah, main tips for then screenwriting is make it feasible within your budget. Look at what locations you have and what you can do with those locations, and be creative in the way that you write your script, develop the characters. And I think for me, I keep repeating it, is using your location to your advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, amazing. I think that sort of sums up the main things that we wanted to speak about today. Tomorrow we're going to look more into the planning, which we have also.
Yeah,
all these things are so interlinked, aren't they? That's the thing about it. It's just getting into that mindset, I think, of just, again, what I said at the beginning, you're maximising every single point to make this, A, the best it can be, but B, it couldn't be done any other way. It has to be this way, like it has to be micro-budget. But yeah, we'll look a little bit more about planning. What else will we look a bit more at?
Your unique selling point. So what is your USP? Yeah.
That's a good one.
Have we got another question here from Jason Hooker? Also, just want to say a big thank you to the Lift-Off team for today's selection of all the lights that never phase into the LA Lift-Off Film Festival. It's an honor.
Congratulations. Yeah,
well
the Los
done.
Angeles Lift-Off Film Festival invites went out this morning. So congratulations, Jason. Looking forward to screening it. That's fantastic. We're excited for LA. Always a buzzy, vibrant festival.
It really is. It really, really is. And hi to APC Cinema. Thank you for joining us on the stream today. As we were saying, we're talking about USPs tomorrow. We're talking about planning ahead.
And just getting out and doing it.
And just doing it. Just doing it. Just doing it. Like, honestly, just do it.
Channel Werner Herzog.
Yeah, Werner Herzog.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll be back tomorrow at the same time, 1 o'clock, to continue this workshop. And please, please, please do come with questions, as we will be able to answer them for you in real time.
And take a look at some of those films if you haven't watched them already, because it's a great place to start.
Thank you so much.
Bye.